Many thanks for choosing us. At least 100 shots of the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine have been administered to unvaccinated travelers who arrived in Ghana after 12 a.m. today. This is in line with the no vaccination, no entry policy announced by the Ghana Health Service as part of its efforts to prevent the continuous importation of COVID-19 cases into the country. Airlines will also be charged an amount of $3,500 for each unvaccinated passenger they bring into Ghana. But just some 12 hours after the rule kicked in, at least 100 unvaccinated travelers have had to receive the jab or be turned away. Let's speak to Manuel Cranting, who spent time today at the Kotoka International Airport monitoring the first day of the no policy, no entry. Well, joining me on the line is Public Health Director, Public Health Expert John Amoisi, who has joined us for more on this one. I'm grateful for your time, Dr. Amoisi.
Well, thanks for having me, Aisha. I trust everything is fine.
Everything is fine here. First, before we talk about the no entry, no vaccination, no entry, let me gauge your mood on this new research that we found on the Omicron variant. It says that it is it causes less illness, even though it is resistant to vaccines. What does this mean, Dr. Amoisi?
No, I think so far it's good news, and I must say that Dr. Salim, who is actually the lead in South Africa, their research institute, who broke this news yesterday to the BBC, did stress that these were still very early days. And as you know, this research was done out of a sample of 200,000 plus COVID patients in South Africa, out of which about 70–80% of them were COVID positive. So it's still very early days. The research was conducted by a research firm, and the research firm, of course, has this kind of data because they are concerned about their insurance claims, and so they collect very meticulous clinical data, which informs whatever insurance mechanisms they put in place. So what I'll say is, just as he said when he announced this, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. It is still very good news that it doesn't seem to cause as much hospitalization or severe illness as before. Now, what is a bit uncertain is you realize that in South Africa they have seroprevalence, quite a high seroprevalence actually. About 60% of the population has been exposed to the virus, and they've vaccinated also about 40% of their population. So that means that people who will be susceptible to severe illness on account of the virus would be much lower. This is compared to when Delta came in, and so it's really, really difficult to tell exactly whether the lower hospitalization and severe disease rate is purely a function of the kind of virus we're dealing with, as opposed to whether it's a function of all the other changes that have taken place over a period of time. So it's one of those we learn as we go, pieces of information, and it's just an additional building block, additional brick that we can add as we try to expand our knowledge on this new variant and its implications for clinical outcomes and ultimately health outcomes, which would inform the kind of public health measures that should be put in place.
So what does this mean to us as individuals? Does it mean that we can easily go to sleep with regards to the COVID measures and COVID protocols that are in place?
Well, I say your guess is as good as mine. When you don't know, especially for something like a virus like this, you need to exercise the utmost caution, because the worst thing is to be caught flat-footed, or actually, let's use the expression, pants down, because then the repercussions are very, very high. I explained in previous interviews how some countries took certain decisions which could have gone either ways But when it went bad, they paid a really, really high price. The UK is an example of that. Brazil and several others are also examples of that. Examples of countries which actually were doing very well and based on their relative success decided to lower their restrictive measures. Case in point is India. And then we saw how the Delta hit them very hard. So if we were to take what we know now on face value, one would say, don't worry so much. We can take it easy. Not take it easy, but just continue as we are doing. But we are still learning, and the evidence on the ground or history shows us that when you don't know the full picture, the best thing is to have your guard up as high as you can. And then you only lower it when you have the full knowledge. And this is why I'm excited about the measures we took, and you were alluding to this, that we started jabbing people upon arrival in Ghana if they're unvaccinated. This is the kind of action that you want to take, really take the very high ground so that no matter how high the water rises, you're still safe. So yeah, I would say no, not the time to relax at all. It's just extra knowledge which we add to what we know. And when we have the full picture, we can make a more confident, informed decisions about whether we could take it easier or not.
Well, there's a group that is questioning the mandatory vaccination upon entry into our airports. And it says that it's not right for the country to force people to actually vaccinate. What do you make of this?
No, I think these are really exciting times for public health law and for legislation in general. And we're really learning these kinds of activities, especially Ghana pioneering this, is actually going to go down in history. It's going to be used for a long time for teaching and as examples of how nuanced these kinds of situations are. We've seen riots in Berlin, Rotterdam, in other parts of Europe, and even in the US against vaccine mandates. From a public health perspective, if you ask me, I'm 101% in support of this decision. This is because there is freedom of movement. You can choose to come to Ghana or not choose to come to Ghana. But if you choose to come to Ghana, then what you have to do is to be vaccinated, and you're given that choice. And if you don't want to be vaccinated, you can choose not to come to Ghana. Under the circumstances, especially given our limited vaccination rates, given the difficulty that we have in enforcing the preventive measures like social distancing and hand washing and so on and so forth, it only makes common sense, let alone public health sense, that we should take this kind of measure. And I'm happy to engage in any debate on this subject. I think it's important that we listen to the arguments that people put forward. It's also important that we present the counter arguments and make this as intellectual as possible. But ultimately, I would say that this is a step in the right direction. And those who think that it's not fair or it's an infringement on their rights, I think they have a right to express themselves, and we should engage with them about my position based on what I would call common sense, and then public health knowledge would tell you that this is definitely the right thing to do.
Dr. Amwese, this is their argument that even at the time when we were at the peak of it, there was no compulsory vaccination. And if you compare us to countries who had the vaccines, and in many of them had vaccinated, I mean, they have recorded more deaths than us. So with or without vaccination, we would survive. So it shouldn't be compulsory. It should be something that I feel like taking and not compulsory.
Yeah, the question is, when we say we will survive, of course, everybody didn't die. People have got COVID more than twice. Some people have been vaccinated and still got COVID anyway. So those are not really the arguments. The argument is this. Vaccination is an activity that one engages in not only for the self, it is actually for the collective benefit. Now, I can make this argument about, well, I've bought a brand new Mercedes-Benz AMG. It's a V8 engine, even a V12, let's say, and I want to exercise my car on the road and just do what I want because it's my car and I bought it and I pay my taxes and have the right to the road. Obviously, if I drive anyhow, and recently there was a Mercedes-Benz driver who drove anyhow, the streets of Accra. He made the news. He was arrested, and he had his fair share, experienced the weight of the law. You can't do what you want because you feel it's your right to do it and it makes you happy, or you think that's best for your own personal well-being. In the case of vaccination, we've realized that people who are unvaccinated, and even people who are vaccinated, when they fall ill, they can carry the virus to other people. What that means is that when you get ill, you are putting others at risk. Now, when it gets to the point where by your actions, others are put at risk, then the rights become limited because we've got to protect others. If it was just a question of we are protecting you from yourself, that would be a totally different argument. But we're protecting you from yourself and you from others should you fall ill or be in a position where you're carrying the virus. And when those arguments are put on the table, it then takes away from the individuality. Now, moving forward, also looking at the numbers, you cannot just use the numbers comparing what's happening in Europe and North America to what we have here in Ghana and argue that because we've had relatively lower deaths, we should quit the vaccination. In actual fact, when you are seeing this, it is actually the time when you have to double down and put in place the most protective measures that you can. I always say this: public health public health measures are often counterintuitive, which is that when you're successful with public health, you actually don't see any trouble, don't see any issues, and this is the paradox. When there is no trouble, it means public health is working well. When there is trouble, it means public health is not working well. So we are always, caught trying to explain to people why we need to keep on doing what we have to do when they don't see any trouble. So the argument is that if we put in place these closures of the airport and closures of the borders so early and put in place certain measures that clearly helped us, it is actually evidence that these things do work, and this is the time to do them. We saw what happened in India. And there's enough evidence to show that places in the world with similar social demographics, weather, and other conditions are susceptible to very negative impact waves of this COVID. And looking at that is enough evidence for putting in place all the protective measures. And I've explained quite clearly how vaccination is perhaps the one single trump card which we can play and play really hard, because all the other measures are a lot more difficult to put in place than the vaccination. And by a large measure, the vaccination is the most effective out of the measures. And this has been proven so clearly, even here in Ghana. When you look at the people who are getting the COVID in our hospitals, it's more than 3 times the probability that such a person will be unvaccinated. I don't know what other data we want to see before we can make that argument that we need to double down on vaccination.
Time, Dr. John Amoise is public health expert with KCCR. He's also a lecturer at the KNUST. Now, earlier this morning, a group known as Advocacy for Christ questioned the compulsory vaccination by government. Convener Adam Senan, who addressed a news conference today, says the government do not have the right to say that all Ghanaians must vaccinate at all cost.
The growing concern about how the vaccines may be impacting the immune system of vaccinated persons should not be glossed over. On Saturday, the 11th of December, 2021, how many days ago is that? 11th December. Dr. Gili Rejev Yoche, Director of Infectious Diseases, Epidemiology at Sheba Medical Center in Israel, expressed her worry about the fact that even persons who had received 2 shots of Pfizer vaccine did not have any immunity against the Omicron variant. She also added that such persons might also be exposed to serious disease if their immune system continued to be affected this way. As a country, we need to be very concerned about these situations which are happening globally and be very cautious about how we proceed. It is in this context that we therefore call on the President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to support the rights of citizens by curtailing the drive to implement mandatory vaccinations. Vaccinations can continue, but they should not be made compulsory. And indeed, the data on countries that have gone ahead of us must be properly interrogated and analyzed. Let's interrogate and investigate what is happening in the countries that have done much more vaccinations. How well are they doing compared with Ghana? We should also invest in research. How come Ghana has done so well without vaccines? If you walk around now, you see many Ghanaians walking around comfortably with no issues. We are entering Christmas, and this variant, which is supposed to produce a mild headache, is about to create severe headaches for all of us.
Convener for the group, Edem Senano, joins me in the studio right now for more on this one. Good to see you, Edem. Edem, so government has explained to you that it's become necessary that the whole country takes the vaccination exercise, and that is why they've made it compulsory. It's for the general good of the public. Why are you opposed to this?
Which general good are we talking about?
That people...
What has happened? What has changed?
Definitely that some people have died from COVID-19.
There's no public threat. There's no public health crisis.
There's COVID-19.
Which of them? The Omicron from South Africa that's giving mild headaches. That's the basis why all of a sudden, after we have survived 18 to 24 months without vaccines, very little of it, we've been able to deal with all the things using erythromycin or ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine with vitamin C and D. The whole of Africa has done very well. Then all of a sudden, in the last quarter of 2021, they come and say compulsory vaccination. Where's the data supporting this?
Definitely the health ministry and the Ghana Health Service, they do a lot of research into some of these things, and they know the situation in which we are. If you're talking about mild headaches, don't forget that there are people who are vulnerable, people with underlying diseases and all of that. Those people do not survive COVID.
The health experts have told us that the Omicron, it's a milder version of the Deltas and the whatnot we started out with. Even with the Deltas and the rest, we survived. 99% of those who were positive recovered and were discharged. 1%, largely with underlying conditions, are those who passed on. It makes sense that our meager resources, therefore, should be applied to people with underlying conditions, because we can tell that they are the ones likely to become susceptible to this. So there's really no basis at the moment, at this point, because of Omicron, which is not as virulent as and potentially deadly as the earlier ones that came. At this point, we are now saying we are going to do compulsory vaccination. When the countries that went ahead of us, those who took the position that you needed 80% coverage to build herd immunity, look at the turbulence there. Israel, they've done the 2 jabs. They've done booster 1, they've done booster 2, they've done booster 3, they are now thinking of booster 4, and there's still confusion. Look at Ireland, look at UK. All the countries that have taken that trajectory appear to have issues. Countries in Africa where we were blessed not to have vaccines, we have done much better. Why aren't we studying how come the therapeutics, just applying drugs, has done better for Africa and Ghana than vaccines? What is the necessity at this point to rush into vaccines when we don't even know? By the way, some of these things should not even be called vaccines. These are mRNA agents, which in terms of the traditional definitions of vaccines would not have been qualified as vaccines.
Really?
Yep. So really there is no justification, especially
but
when
why
the
do you describe them as so?
As what?
As not qualified to be vaccines?
Because, the traditional vaccines, if we're sticking with the terminology we've used for years, until the last 2 years, were clearly a mild form of the specific type of disease intended to trigger antibodies in your system so that when you get the real disease, you could combat it. Some of these are not mild forms. These mRNA ones are no longer, they have nothing to do with mild forms of the precise disease. Just as a portion of the DNA strand that they think should be able to help you deal with it, triggers a certain reaction.
Okay.
Those are not proper vaccines in the first place. But I think the greatest danger there is we don't yet understand. We've not done the long-term studies to tell how these things impact on the human body. So there are lots of complications. There's been higher levels of adverse reactions related to COVID-19 vaccines than they have been with all the other vaccines since the start of the world, or whatever you want to call it. This period, 2 years, has seen more adverse reactions in terms of heart-related conditions, in terms of deaths from these vaccines.
Really?
We need to take that very seriously. Actually, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I mean, even this morning, as we were talking, there was one lady with me whose son arrived on one of the flights yesterday. I was compulsorily given the jab. He couldn't get up this morning. The parents are running around. And she was there just describing what is going on, that he can't lift his arm, he's not well, and they're trying to think.
But the virologists, the immunologists, and the scientists have explained to us that these are just signs or symptoms that you get just for a few days. All of us who took the jab experienced it for some few days and it's gone. Unless you prove otherwise, that there's been a research to show that the vaccination actually aids people in dying or doesn't really do anything to avert COVID-19, then what exactly is your concern?
So here is the thing. I'm a scientist. Trained as a scientist. Worked as a research scientist before I transitioned into a science-related industry. So I know the science. Right here, we have references of research done across the globe showing that the adverse effects from these vaccines are much more than any of the other vaccines before. It appears that we are treating it very casually and not understanding the implications. I know at least 3 people, one who lost her husband who had been fine, they just went for the jab, 2 days later, he was dead. I know one lady who lost her only son, and is in the UK, is not quite sure what to do with himself and herself, and wakes up, he died at 2 a.m., so she wakes up every night just crying. She's thinking of relocating. She doesn't know what her life is about. And it's just that we don't yet have the system in Ghana for those who are having adverse reactions to report. So we haven't captured it. But there are many more people being adversely affected by this than before. Now, if we're having a situation where there was a crisis, and then you say, let's do the mandatory vaccinations, that would make sense. Let me tell the story of one lady who's in the UK now. By the 24th of December, the UK's process is that you should be vaccinated or else you might lose your job. She has problems with blood clots. So in the last 48 hours, she's been talking with her siblings about, what do I do? Now, she doesn't feel comfortable because she knows that she already has, naturally, she's always had blood clots, and she's afraid that these vaccines may it will kill her.
Compound.
So her sister here is advising her, just come home and rest. Now, as I listened to her sister yesterday, I was telling myself, or this morning, I was like, but if you come to Ghana, now they are saying compulsory vaccination. She's worried that these particular drugs will trigger blood clotting, and she may die. So it's a death sentence for her. So nobody is actually paying attention to how many people are getting affected by this. The question is, what is the value added at this point? And when you look at the terrain right now in terms of the health status of Ghanaians, you just step out. 80% of Ghanaians are walking around without a worry, without a crisis on their minds. All of a sudden, our government says that if you're a government worker, if you're a teacher, if you are engaged in anything related to the airport and it's certain, you must have a mandatory vaccination. There are people who, for very good reason, don't want these vaccinations. What is the crisis? What's the public health threat that is compelling us to say, as a matter of force, we are insisting that you must get vaccinated? So
your concern is not because people are being forced to take the jabs, but it's because you feel there's something wrong with the jabs that they are giving the people?
Levels. There are rights issues when you force them. We are okay with the social distancing, using a face mask, all the hand washing, all the protocols, COVID-19 are fine. We are not even saying that vaccination should stop. I mean, for anyone who's comfortable, go ahead and get vaccinated, because there are some vulnerable groups who may benefit much more because they have certain conditions that the vaccination may give them a longer life if there is any threat of getting affected by the virus. However, there are many more people who don't believe they'll be affected, who may have other reasons why they don't want to take the vaccination. And we are saying there should be no compulsory vaccination, because our understanding of Articles 12 to 15 clearly state that these are rights of citizens that should not be compromised. Again, in Article 14, that gives a leeway that says that the rights of personal liberty may be restricted. It does so in the context that you have been found to have a contagious disease or infectious disease, in which case, what it describes is that it's, for example, that you will be quarantined. It does not say that somebody should then forcefully inject you. There's no such thing in the Constitution.
But do you also take note of the fact that, I mean, even though you have rights, you have responsibility to protect others. And so if you contracting COVID and you may be asymptomatic and I may be symptomatic, you not vaccinating and contracting the disease could be harmful to me because you'll be severely ill and I could also get it from you.
Yes, I think that argument is really flawed. It's flawed to the extent that, look at the evidence in Ghana. 99%, it's almost like getting a cold and getting through the cold. 99% of those who got COVID recovered and got discharged. The 1% who got severely affected and died were people largely with underlying conditions. What does that tell you? It tells you that the vast majority of Ghanaians will get through this and build natural immunity. The few who we can tell might not get through that are the ones who therefore should be intentionally encouraged through education that come for the vaccination, because from the data we have locally, and that's the point. The point is that when we look at the data for Africa, look at the data for Ghana, and compared with the data for the high-flying Israels and whatnot, there's a question about methodology. Those who have said vaccination is the way to go, today, where are they? They are not doing well. So what's the logic behind also promoting vaccinations when those who have gone ahead of us are not doing well? Those who didn't have access to vaccines and focus on the therapeutics, erythromycin with vitamin C and D, ivermectin with vitamin C and D, hydroxychloroquine with vitamin C and D, they have done better. They have had more people recover and be discharged. So what is the interpretation being given? What data are we analyzing to now say, start vaccinating everybody? We say, okay, we don't want to fight with you. If maybe somebody is giving you 71 million euro, so you say pandemic resource, and that resources have come in, so you want to do something.
Are you suspecting foul play in all of this?
No, we are just saying that people are not interrogating the data. It's right there on the internet, and it's from credible sources. It's from the CDC, it's from the UK government, it's from the New York Times. The data is available. And it shows that the countries that have pursued vaccination, they are in turbulent times. Just check. The countries that have focused more on therapeutics appear to have done better. Why are we not doing local research to find how come Ghana did so well? How come we've had a 99%, 98.58, which is really 99% recovery and discharge rate against the 1% that have actually died? And most of the 1%, they will tell you, had underlying conditions. If you understand that, what it means to me is that identify those with underlying conditions in Ghana and target them, because the rest of the population are going to pass through it. Now, the other advantage is this. Natural immunity has been found to be longer lasting and more capable of dealing with new variants than the vaccinated-induced immunity. So data is showing that most people who've been vaccinated, by the next variant, the effectiveness of that vaccinate has come down 20, 30, 40%. They are no longer able to cope. However, those with natural immunity, and there are more than 130 research papers globally, and we've put a link there, different professionals, professors and whatnot, coming to the conclusion that it is better for people to get the natural immunity, which allows them to have immunity against different variants, rather than the vaccine-induced immunity. That becomes selective. What it does, it tunes your body to now be selective for Delta variant, because that's a Delta vaccine. Then when the new vaccine comes, Omicron, the new mutant comes, your body is not able to deal with it. So we are finding rapidly declining immunity levels in people who have been vaccinated, rather than those who have had natural immunity. That's apart from the fact that with the mRNA, we are not quite sure what that DNA strand is introducing to your body. We have seen heart-related conditions for many people. Most of the adverse effects are heart-related. So if you're paying attention to, especially sports, lots of sports people have been dropping and dying in football matches and other sports and being carried on.
And has there been a research to link it to the vaccination?
Yes.
Really?
Yes,
I would love
yes.
to
it's all
see
there.
that research.
And if you have time, I'll be able to send you clips for you to see. So there's a lot of issues showing that the adverse reactions are much higher with this set of vaccines than they have been with other vaccines.
Okay.
And so we need to be more cautious. What we are saying is this, government, we are not saying stop vaccinations. What we are saying is that tread cautiously and don't make it compulsory, because for somebody it's an issue of life and death. They already have conditions that predispose them to being susceptible to things like this lady in the UK who knows that I naturally always get blood clots. Taking these vaccines that are already supposed to create certain negative conditions related to heart is likely to kill me.
Okay.
So really her choice is then to say I'm resigning from my job.
Okay.
So we are saying that government don't make, you can go with one of your vaccines. People who are comfortable, let them go ahead. It means they've given consent. But don't force people, because that's not right.
Is this something you've presented to government, your statement?
Yes.
You've presented to the minister?
No. I mean, no, we've had a press conference, and yes, a copy will be sent.
To the minister.
Yes.
So definitely there hasn't been any response.
No, not yet.
Right. So be it as it may, it is started at the airport, and you are saying that government shouldn't make it compulsory.
It should not be mandated.
How do you intend to push for this? This seems like a tough one.
It's not about us. We are just educating the citizens and the country. We expect those who understand to appreciate that we are going down a slippery slope. Just take a look at the countries that went before us and said we are pursuing herd immunity through 80% vaccination coverage. See what is happening there.
But why now? Because government was giving indication this will happen, I mean, for some time now before it started. Why didn't you strike before this happened?
I am not aware that government gave any indication that they're going to make vaccination compulsory.
At least some few days it came out. They told the public that this is what was going to happen. So there was a notice.
That's in the last 2 weeks.
Yes. So
Yes.
I mean,
but
you could have done something before this time, before it kickstarts.
We never, because if you take the US, for example, all attempts to make a mandated vaccine by President Biden has been shut down. Been shut down at circuit court level. It's been shut down at the appeal court level.
Okay.
That you are overstretching the legal basis for this. So there are many jurisdictions where it is clear that they are clear in their mind that allow, in terms of the rights of citizens, that they make that choice, because that's a choice of personal liberty, whether to take or not to take. So we're not anticipating that the government of Ghana will take that position and say that we are going to force you to take a vaccine, especially when 99% have recovered. I mean, the science and the evidence on the ground does not support the decision we are taking now. We are not quite sure what data they are looking at. We are not sure where the public health threat or public health crisis that leads to our minister saying that he's making this mandatory, where it's arising from.
All right, this is something we'll be monitoring and see what comes out from the Ministry of Health. This will be, a copy will be sent to them, right? So we'll be getting response from government, and as and when we get it, we'll share with you, our viewers. Convener for Advocates for Christ Ghana, Edem Senano, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. Now, health authorities in the Techima municipality of the Bono East region are working towards stepping up education and sensitization campaigns to have more people accept the coronavirus vaccines ahead of the Christmas festivities. The municipality has, since the outbreak of the pandemic, recorded over 30% of the cumulative number of cases recorded across the region. There's more in the following report.
Ahead of the festive season, the Techima Municipal Health Directorate is increasing its sensitization exercises across the municipality as a means of curbing the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Municipal Director of Health Services Dr. Kusi Fosuhene told JoyNews that the move is to help have an incident-free Christmas season.
We are very much aware that during the Christmas season, there will be lots of traveling, there will be lots of festivities, programs of various nature, church, religious, social. So as a municipality, the first thing we are doing is we are having an emergency public health emergency management committee meeting, which is headed by the municipal chief executive, to enforce the existing protocols or measures, and then to add on if it's necessary, especially with the Omicron variant around. And of course, I'm sure our enforcement officers will be more visible, because we know that during the Christmas time there is an influx of people into the major cities, so they will be doing more patrols and more education in public places, so that we all help minimize the spread of COVID, and then we would have an incident-free New Year, hopefully.
He further noted that with vaccine hesitancy, the Directorate is stepping up its education campaigns to have more people receive the COVID-19 vaccines.
You know, as you keep vaccinating, your numbers goes up. Then you get to a critical point where the very willing ones are done vaccinating. Then you start getting people who are a bit reluctant or hesitant to vaccinate, and that calls for stepping up our education. So that's exactly what we have been doing in the past week. We took a break from the vaccination to step up the awareness and the education. As I speak to you, there is another meeting going on in the Brunchempim Hall on vaccine hesitancy alone. These are all measures to step up the coverages for those who may not be so willing, like the first numbers we had. So I've been impressed, but there is still more room for improvement.
Medical Director of the Techiman Holy Family Hospital, which is the largest referral center for COVID-19, Dr. Ernest Amiao, noted that the facility is collaborating with the media to increase awareness ahead of the Yuletide.
As media houses, we use them as medium or platforms to communicate and educate, particularly the preventive aspects of this pandemic. And that's how come it became necessary that we met the media today to brief them on measures we have taken as an institution or a hospital to stop the spread of COVID-19, and to also entreat them that as stakeholders, they will give us the opportunity to continue to come to their media houses to continue with the education that we are giving.
He further entreated the general public to ignore the various myths surrounding the vaccines and go for the jabs in order to remain protected against the pandemic.
I will entreat everybody to ignore the myth surrounding the vaccines and to go for the vaccines, because it will protect you, it will protect me, it will protect everybody, so we could curb this pandemic.
Reporting for Joy News, Anas Sabit, Techiman.
We're still live on the Pulse, and we're coming to you from our studios in Kokomlemle. You can also join by all our social media handles on JoyNews on TV. You can tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. We'll be back with more. Welcome back to the Pulse. This afternoon, there's a push for a legislative instrument to operationalize the law which legalizes cannabis. Hamper Ghana is leading this advocacy, and today they held a news conference to raise concerns about the delay in the introduction of the legislative instrument. Nana Kwekwajiman is CEO of Empire, okay, and he joins me in the studio. Nana, good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well.
Well, this conversation about legalizing cannabis, marijuana has been back and forth in this country. Why are you bringing it up again at this particular time?
Well, we just want to knock on government's door because at the end of this week, they'll go into recess.
Okay.
And so we just want to knock on their door and remind them that, look, this is the 20th month since the law has actually been passed, because the law was passed March 2020. And so far today, it's taken 20 months to get absolutely nowhere, because we should have had this legislation passed a long time ago.
Okay, so there's a bill in Parliament.
No, it's not a bill. It's already been passed.
It's been passed.
It's the LI, as you described.
Okay, the LI for its implementation.
That's right.
Okay, that is delayed.
It shouldn't take 20 months. Malawi passed the law in February of the same year, and by August, they'd also passed their LI. And now they're cultivating. And as we all know, Mike Tyson is now going to be the ambassador for cannabis production in Mali and Malawi. And Malawi expect to attract so many different kinds of investors, because it's not just about the cultivation, it's also about adding value, because that's really where the money is. And Ghana, we're so blessed, we're on the equator, our climate and everything is fine, even though we have seen some adjustments because of climate change, we're still okay. We can cultivate 3 times a year, while other countries are doing twice, and some are even doing once. And in the USA, where in many states they're doing 1 time a year harvest, they're still making 20 and 30 billion US dollars from it. So, you know, there's so much to be gained in terms of economic benefit and environmentally too. We've been complaining about the water bodies that have been poisoned. We've been complaining about the land that people used to source gold from being contaminated. And when you cultivate hemp on those lands, and when you cultivate hemp in those water bodies, the hemp will clean those water bodies and clean those lands up to the point that you can reclaim those lands and start vegetation there again, and to the point where you can now drink that water once again. So there's huge benefits economically, environmentally, and of course medicinally, that too. I mean, it just goes way beyond, and we can't understand why, you know, highly educated people in our parliament are taking 20 months to pass a legislation which Hag even contributed 99% to and had it pushed along the line for them to approve. There's nothing in it. It's a no-brainer.
Okay. So how much of importance is this operationalization of the law, and how urgent is it as you describe?
It's very urgent, and the reason why it's very urgent is because we have a lot of farmers out there who are cultivating illegally. They are eagerly awaiting to make that transition from illegality to legality. And so it's urgent, because even though we say, yes, it's against the law, and I totally understand that, and I stand by that, the people who I've gone to see who have been cultivating marijuana for generations can't just throw that aside, because they have family commitments just like anybody else. Now, all we need to see happen is the process for this LI to be, you know, whistle-stopped, if you like, so that we can, you know, it's going to help us to stop illegal cannabis cultivation. And that's what the authorities don't understand, because, you see, with the advent of hemp, anyone who cultivates marijuana within 50-mile radius will see their crop pollinated by the hemp that is being growing. So their crop won't be any good. So this in itself will stop people from cultivating marijuana and encourage them to just cultivate industrial hemp. So there's so many angles, there's so many, the dynamics of it is so many, but it's as if the people just cannot see.
So, I mean, mostly the conversation has been about the moral rights, and also what the negative aspect of what, I mean, smoking it, for instance, would cause you. But you talk about medicinal benefits, you talk about cosmetic benefits and other benefits. What are these benefits that the country must actually avert its mind to?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, with industrial hemp, the discussion about smoking and all that just doesn't come in, because this isn't something that someone smokes.
Okay.
This is used for strictly industrial purposes and strictly for medicinal purposes.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of talk about climate change, but if we started to construct our buildings out of hempcrete, we will see that the hempcrete would absorb the carbon dioxide, even in our little part of the world, and that would have a significant change when it comes to the issues of climate change.
Okay.
The clothes you're wearing can be made out of hemp, the building we're in, the table we're sitting at, everything plastic, because just imagine, every year we have a major catastrophe. It's like Christmas. When the rainy season comes, we know there's going to be floods, and some people, unfortunately, are going to die. Now, everything can be made, everything plastic can be made out of hemp. industrial hemp, and it's biodegradable. So you're looking at between 40 and 50 days that it would simply biodegrade, whereas the plastics that we're using now can go 100 years without any degrading at all. So that's even good for us as well. You see? So there's so many different benefits. We're looking at the cotton industry. You can now produce cotton and mix it with hemp.
Okay.
Yes, because it produces what they call it a bast fiber.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it's not that stretchable and all that kind of stuff, but you can add other fibers in there to make it how you want it to be. It's a mass market when it comes to, you know, fabrics, etc.
Okay.
You know, curtains, floor coverings. It's there. Insulation. It's there. There's so many things. Children have autism. Children have epilepsy. Right now we're feeding them, we're overdosing them on opioids when what they need is cannabis.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
And
really.
cannabis can cure epilepsy?
Of course. It's not can, it does.
It does?
It does.
There's a research to this effect?
Oh, absolutely. It reverses the seizures.
Wow.
And then eventually brings them to a halt. Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about an amount of, what, $30 million that those who cultivate this could provide for government in, like, say, 5 months?
Well, what I'm saying to you is this, and what I'm saying to government is this. Let's get the licenses out. We're ready to apply for our license. Give us a license.
Okay.
And you, government, you give us 2,000 acres of arable land you have in one place.
Okay.
Be an absentee farmer.
Okay.
So as an absentee farmer, we will cultivate 2,000 acres, or up to 2,000 acres of industrial hemp. And when we harvest, packed and export, we will give government $30 million US every single time we harvest. And we harvest 3 times for the year. It's actually 14 months, but we say 3 times for the year. That's 90 million going to government for free. 2,000 acres.
Okay.
Our word is our bond. We stand tall to that.
Okay.
You wouldn't be fussing and fighting in Parliament about e-levy and this and that and all that kind of stuff, because as an absentee farmer, government, as an absentee farmer, can turn 30 million like every 5 months.
Okay.
For the rest of
$1 million. $1
million, US $1 million.
Okay. Wow. And what kind of engagement have you had with Parliament in terms of why the LI has not been passed so that this can be operationalized?
Well, I mean, they just give so many different reasons.
What
I mean, they say, don't worry, we'll deal with it. Yes, we've got your back, blah, blah, blah. But you can see they easily get diverted with so many different things. The partisanship within the August House is such that, you know, people have got their children going to school under trees. You know, women are giving birth, you know, and lying down on the floor in the maternity ward. You know, schools are collapsing and killing children, innocent children, you know, and what are they doing in Parliament? We have something here. We have a great opportunity, right? Because this is an industrial revolution. That is what this is. That's what it can be. It's an industrial revolution. And when it kicks off in Ghana, they'll be surprised to see that Ghana is the leader in all of this, despite what Malawi have done, despite what Zimbabwe have done, Zambia have done. Because of the framework, because of the infrastructure we have created, they will see that Ghana is a leader in this. Because you are talking to me as Hempire Agri Ghana, but I can tell you that we have the Hempire Association of Malawi, of Ethiopia, of Kenya, of Nigeria, Liberia, Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana, South Africa. So we are not just focused in Ghana. It's our primary cause, no doubt, because we are Ghanaians. But we want to come up with, we want to conjure a standard, right? So that anybody who comes for hemp, wherever you are coming from, it's going to be one price. You ain't going to sell out Botswana with Ghana. We're not going to undercut anybody, and no one should undercut us, because the whole thing's going to be a standard, like OPEC.
Okay.
You see how the Arabs have done it?
Yeah.
That's how we've got to do it.
Do you have plans of meeting the legislature, I mean members of parliament,
Of course.
so that you can explain to them why they should fast track the LI?
A committee is working on that now. And I'm so grateful to report to the public that at today's press conference, we were honoured to have the presence of the Deputy Director General, Mr. Michael Addo, from the Narcotics Control Commission. And we were very grateful for his contribution because, you know, wannabe farmers want to hear from the Narcotic Control Commission. What are you doing? What's the problem? And he came and he said, look, the problem isn't with us because we've done our work. We've given it to the AG. We've given it to the Ministry of Interior and Defence. The problem lies over there because we are ready. You know, and for us, that's a green light.
Okay. When do you intend to meet them?
Well, that would be telling, wouldn't it, Aisha?
All right.
So we won't say, but it's definitely going to happen. And we want to ensure our farmers that, look, this is going to happen within the next quarter of next year, inshallah.
Inshallah. So it's definitely must happen, and something we'll be monitoring. Nana Ajiman is CEO of Empire Agri Ghana. I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. Well, this is a job that many scoff at, and yet the service they provide is constant demand. Eja Pitri is a coffin maker, and her 39-year-old daughter, his 39-year-old daughter, is an undertaker preparing and making up dead bodies for burial in Bokoro, a community just on the outskirts of Takoradi. This is a match made for business, and for them, business is booming. My colleague Justice Bade went to meet them.
Eja Pitu has made a life for himself out of carpentry. 20 years ago, he started making coffins.
I make 3 coffins every 3 days, working alone. I love this job. I don't think any other job can make me happier than making coffins.
Elizabeth Fariba is Eja Pinti's first daughter. At 19, when her father's mother died, she says she was there when an undertaker who had been hired bathed her grandmother and prepared the body for burial. It was then, in her grief, that an idea to work on dead bodies hit her.
My dad used to make the old type of coffins. So when I learned this job, I told him there's a high demand for modern coffins, and so he should learn how to make them so we can work together.
Today, a major funeral is happening in Kijabli, also close to Takoradi. Elizabeth has been hired to prepare the corpse. Her father is the one who made the coffin that is being used for burial. I have come to see them at work.
To survive in this world, you need to be smart. I couldn't complete school, and so in choosing a job, I decided my daughter and I should do jobs that complement each other. So now, people hire her to dress their relatives, and she recommends me to sell them a coffin. We planned this, and it's working.
Eja Pinti wants to expand his business beyond Takoradi. Her daughter too wants to do same. She has now ventured into wedding decor and employs more than 20 people, sometimes shuffling between up to 4 funerals she's been hired to work at on some weekends.
This is my job, and it is God's plan for everyone to die, even me. I can die today. And so if people die, we're here to help the family.
A fisherman going to sea prays for fish. A mason prays for people to build so he can be hired. This is my job too, and so I don't pray for people to die. But when they die, it's good news for me, so I can also make coffins for them.
Funerals are a big deal in many parts of Ghana, and as humans cannot swerve the inevitable icy hands of death, business continues to boom for people like Eja Pinter and her daughter. Justice Bedu, JoyNews, Bokro, in the Western region.
Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has launched the Ghana TVET service under the theme Steering Ghana's Industrialization Drive Through Skill Acquisition for National Development. The service replaces the former decentralized and uncoordinated TVET administration. The Vice President ascribed the fall in quality in the sector to the former system. He hopes the TVET service will propel the sector and country to develop. He also reiterated government's interest in establishing an applied technology high school which will be available to JHS graduates next year.
It is to officially launch the newly born baby, the Ghana TVET service. But before I do that, it is essential to remind ourselves how we got where we are today. Before January 2017, many challenges, including the poor perception of TVET, the multiplicity of standards, testing and certification systems, and an informal TVET system that had been neglected and detached from the formal sector, affected the quality of TVET delivery in our institutions. This rendered it difficult for the sector to become the key catalyst that could spur industrialization and decent job creation for the citizens of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, government is tackling many of these issues. This government from 2017, as part of the President's plan to transform the technical and vocational education and training in the country, has been streamlining TVET to ensure that the sector becomes a central force of our national development. One of the 049 is to ensure that all TVET providing institutions under the 19 ministries are realigned to the Ghana TVET service. Hitherto, these TVET institutions were under umbrella bodies such as Ghana Education Services Technical and Vocational Educational Division, National Vocational Training Institute, NVTI, Opportunities Industrialization Center, Ghana, OIC, as President Kufuor mentioned in the documentary, Gender, Children and Social Protection, Ghana Regional Appropriate Technology Industrial Service, the GRATIS, Community Development Vocational Institutes, Youth Leadership and Skills Training Institutes, Social Welfare Training Institutes, Farm Institutes, and Technology Solution Centers and Integrated Community Centers for Employable Skills. So we just had a plethora of all these TVET institutions being run by 19 different ministries. Ladies and gentlemen, it is well documented that there is a rising global demand for artisans and technicians in various fields in the global economy. The International Labour Office, ILO, in its 2020 Global Employment Trends for Youth report,
raise resources to be able to pay and then take them back. So sometimes they are able stay up to a month or two before their families are able to get money to rescue them. And so it's a big concern to people in these areas and a matter of concern to the regional police command. Yesterday I spoke with the Northern Regional Crime Officer, and he says that they've beefed up security in most of these areas. They've done some arrests, and that has brought the number drastically down. They said that from the beginning of the year, it was actually alarming, but with these arrests that they have made, the situation seems under control.
How are residents themselves protecting themselves against this kind of security threat?
So, for instance, in Saboba, when I spoke to some residents, they said they used to go to the farm individually. Now people go to the farm in pairs, and they don't stay longer like they used to. And so they themselves are putting in measures to ensure their own security. And so people are doing something at least about their own security.
Let's look at the arrests that have been made so far by the police. What's police investigation gathering?
I didn't get the question.
We're told that there's been some arrests, right?
Yes.
What is police gathering from investigating the people that they've arrested?
And we are told that they have...
On an endurance march through the principal streets of Ichiman to highlight their preparedness towards combating crime during the Yuletide. The move, according to the Bono East Regional Police Commander DCOP Moses Asabagna Atibila, is to send a message to troublemakers as well as maintain order during the festive season.
We will let them know that we are here. If they misbehave, they will stay with us during the Christmas, during the New Year, till we finish the New Year, the Christmas, before we release them. Now, we have been able to give that message to them. And you could see how they came out in their numbers to listen to us and to appreciate the message that we're giving to them. So, we have achieved our objective.
He assured members of the general public that there will be increased police visibility across the region and asked that troublemakers would be dealt with according to the law.
My plan is to go around, find out those areas that we say they are crime-prone areas, and I will blend every personnel with the what? With the police, and we will put you on those areas to police the place for everybody to spend the Christmas and the New Year peacefully.
The operation, which saw personnel of the Ghana Armed Forces, the Ghana National Fire Service, the Immigration Service and the Ambulance Service, is among other things to ensure that members of the security services are readily available to protect lives and properties and also maintain law and order throughout the season.
Everywhere you go during the Christmas activities, there will be a policeman, there will be a security man at the corner, making sure. I know we have some people, you people call them untouchable. Please tell them this time around they are touchable. They are all touchable. They are all touchable. So let's come as a team, work together and make a change. A change, if we focus on the change, is better than we focus on the what? The results. Because when we focus on the change, then we shall get the results.
Reporting for JoyNews, Anas Sabit, Tichima.
Let's go back and speak about COVID-19 issues, because right now I've been joined by Dr. Dacosta Abuaje, who is head of risk communication with the COVID team with the Ghana Health Service. And Dr. Abuaje, I'm grateful for your time. Today, there's been back and forth with your mandatory vaccination exercise. The advocate for Christ Ghana has been accusing you of treating Ghanaians unfairly by asking that people mandatory, or making it mandatory for people to vaccinate upon entry into the country, and also asking people around in the country to vaccinate compulsorily. How do you respond to this?
Thank you very much, Aisha. Good evening or afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Now, you remember the last time when I'm not sure if it was you or someone, I told the person that we have declared the month of December as a vaccination month, of which we are working through. We will respect people's rights. We know the Public Health Act very well. The Public Health Act of 2012 Act 851. In fact, section of it, which is I think from 20. I think it's from 20. Okay, let's take the 26. You see, 26, for example, says that a public vaccinator may examine and vaccinate a person who arrives in the country but cannot produce satisfactory evidence of successful vaccination. So currently, if you look at the powers of the ministry, the Ghana Health Service, and what the minister has invoked now, this is what we are working on for the travelers coming in country. Now we know that you need an executive instrument, which I have said this over and over in so many platforms. That is when the in-country mandatory vaccination kicks in. We are not there yet. We are now preparing the population to make sure that obviously we give them enough opportunity for them to get vaccinated. So we will certainly get the EI in place before the mandatory vaccination in country kicks in.
But at the airport,
okay. What we have done at the airport is within the legal framework of Public Health Act 2012, which is section 26. It's clear. There is no ambiguity in that. And every lawyer, even the secondary school students will tell you this. So I don't know why people are making noise saying that we are not respecting their rights and everything.
I'm curious to know.
Have lawyers as well.
Dr. Abuaje, I'm curious to know what the law says. The law that you just quoted. What does it say?
Okay, so it says that a public vaccinator may examine and vaccinate a person who arrives in the country but cannot produce satisfactory evidence or successful vaccination. So we are within our right to, as long as we are protecting the whole population, to protect the 30 million as against an individual. And we are backed by the Public Health Act 2012 Act 851, Section 26. It's clear on the examination and vaccination at the point of entry.
Are you saying that there's no mandatory vaccination in the country, within the populace right now?
No, for now, there is no mandatory vaccination for now.
Okay.
For now, because the month of December has been declared as the month of vaccination.
But it's not mandatory.
Giving people the opportunity to vaccinate. Then the health minister, by an executive instrument, will come with the mandate. And he said at the press conference that we had, the Director General said, I have explained this in various platforms. Various public health experts are explaining. So because we know the law. So the fact is, we are now preparing the population so that we respect all rights. But what we have done at the airport case starts today. We are within the law. to do that.
But even before you kickstart the mandatory vaccination, the group is quoting Article 12 of the Constitution, which spells out fundamental human rights for the citizenry, the right to associate, the right to actually choose what they really want for themselves. Where lies the legality of this exercise you seek to embark on?
Well, I have. You see, we are in a pandemic. We are in fact, if you are in a pandemic, there are certain things like you are confronting a war. You are confronting war. There are certain things that you have to do, and the pandemic gives the health minister the right to do certain things, and it's exactly what we have done. We have not violated anybody's right. Let me put that right. We have not violated anybody's right. And I have given you that invocation of the Public Health Act 2012, Act 854, Section 24, gives the Ministry of Health, the health authorities, the mandate to vaccinate people at the point of entry. That is within the law. So we haven't violated anybody's right.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since you started your vaccination drive. How has the progress been?
Thank you. So it is going very well. And let me say that, you see, when we started, we had vaccinated only about 5 million of the population. But as we speak now, we are about 7.5 getting to 8 million people. So it means we are doing a lot. And it is working very well. In fact, at some centers, there are queues. And I think we are moving into a campaign mode maybe within this week. And this is where we will intensify the above-the-line communication. Then we will be, like I told you the other time, so we are taking the vaccines to people. So it is working very well. On Sunday, we'll be going to churches. We will be going to places where people gather, like football stadia and other places, and it is working very well. In fact, personally, I have contacted the GPRTU, and they gave us a list of all the stations that they want us to vaccinate them. So I'm linking up with the Greater Accra region for them to do that exercise. They have told me that they've done some of the stations, but we still have more to go.
So the over 7 million that you talk about, are they people who have been fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated?
I think I have to check. I have to check my data to give you the real numbers of people who are fully vaccinated. But what I'm trying to allude to is that the last time when we spoke, the total number of people who had been vaccinated, I think, was around 4,000 or 5,000. But to do within 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks about 3 million people, it means that our system is effective and efficient. So we are only appealing to Ghanaians to avail themselves to be vaccinated. See, our target is 20 million. Do we have the vaccines to vaccinate the 20 million population? Yes, we do have them. In fact, the last time we had about 12.3 million of the vaccines in, and we had 8 million in the pipeline. But because we continue to vaccinate, I think when I checked yesterday, it was about 9 million. We still have some vaccines in the pipeline coming in. Now, there's one thing that we have done. We are also using the Pfizer to vaccinate 50-year-old adolescents in school. So that exercise is also going on very, very well. And I know for some universities, they've even issued an alert to parents that they have to, their children or their wards should be vaccinated before they come back to school. All these measures are good to support the system that we put in place so that we all get the herd immunity. We open our economy, we open our social activities, then we get back to normal. We get our lives back.
I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Dacosta Abuaje is Director of Health Promotions and Head of Risk Communication Team at the Ghana Health Service. I will take a break on the polls this afternoon. We'll bring you the very latest from the world of sports. And that's where we part company. I've indeed enjoyed my almost 2 hours stay with you. Up next is Let's Talk Showbiz, but you can get more of the news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. There's also updates of all the developing stories.